everyone.
Okay, excellent. I'll be flying in incognito mode, so I will not be able to see anything else because of these floating things here. I don't want to know about the presentation. All right, excellent. Just give me a second. All right, morning. Morning, everyone. How are you all? How are you all doing?
Good morning.
Morning.
Good
Morning.
Thank
Morning.
Is it morning for everyone?
Hello,
Great
everyone.
stuff, eh?
Hello.
It'll be quite interesting to find out, where you're from and from the chat, what time it is in your particular area. I see also a few familiar faces, so please welcome. My name is Marlon Kamesa. I'm the director of Human Change Management Institute for Africa, as well as the English-speaking European countries, rather, and the Americas, United States. I have with me Florence. That's the lady who's been, helping me out. And she'll be helping me out for the rest of the session. She's my co-director for the Human Change Management Institute. We also have Vicent, who's the director for the Global Human Change Management Institute. He did say to us that it's about 4 a.m. in Brazil, so he's not ready or speak today. Maybe later on as things get a bit more exciting, right? All right, so just to carry on with the program, just give me a second. All right, so what we'll be covering today is the following. We'll give you just an overview of, sorry, I just want to get rid of these floating things right here. I cannot see the rest of my presentation. Just give me a second. Okay, here we go. I think just to start off, we'll just delve into why we're speaking about change anyway, the need for change management. We'll also give you quite a bit more information around, the relationship between project management and change management. And then within that, also just, delve into the history of change management a little bit and where HCMBOK comes in. We'll also just cover a few of the key pillars, HCMBOK. We will delve down into detail around maybe 2-3 key pillars. And then at the end, we have a quiz and prize giving. So we'll be asking you at the end. So we really need your attention in the next 2 hours. We're going to be asking questions around the presentation. And we have 3 prizes available. The first one is 100% cover for the next HCMBOK training certification program that we're running in May or June. And then the other 2 prizes will be 50% of the charge for the HCMBOK training certification for the rest of the year. So you can choose which particular slot you like to take. And we will be in touch with you after the session. All right, having said that, let me proceed. Okay, so just a few, not really house rules, but how we're going to work. Connectivity, if there's an issue, I have given in a dial-in number as well, from the link provided. We encourage as much interaction as possible because as much as we are sharing with you information around the masterclass session, I think, dealing with some of your case studies relevant to your particular areas is going to be quite, important for us as well, so that we can base our interaction around tangibles. If you can observe the mute, unmute. If you are talking, unmute. If you're not, if you can please keep on mute. Video etiquette. I'm sure you've all seen a few videos that float around where etiquette was not observed. So I don't think I need to go into detail around video etiquette. So if you can observe some of the video etiquette that I'm sure you all know about. We have the raise hand function. Florence will be observing. And I'll also observe when Florence does a part of the presentation. So we can get back to you and ask if you have any questions or maybe any additions to the presentation. Your contributions throughout, please, they're welcome throughout the chat area. And then unmute and contribute. Thank you very much. So just to give you a bit of background in terms of HUCMI, who we are a qualified education provider by the Association of Change Management Practitioners. We operate from 27 training centers globally. We are PMI accredited, and all our training globally, it is run by people who have been in the trenches before. So people who have consulted within the change management space or project space, so that they add value to whatever case study that you might discuss during the process of training. So that's just us in brief. More information is available on our website, that is www.hucmi.com. So yeah, we're here to discuss change management, and I guess it's quite important to ask the question, why are we even discussing change management, right? Why is it so important that we need to have, I think about 30 people so far that have entered the room to talk about change management? All right, I'm going to propose for you a few reasons why it has become more important to discuss change management more than it has ever been. All right, and these are as follows. All right, this kind of picture is quite interesting. There are quite a few pictures like this, that I think some of us have seen this in the with regards to China. We know they've got interesting land rights where if someone refuses to move from their property, you can really not do nothing much about it. But what it represents is, I think, the individual or the occupants of this particular place here. What it represents is, the challenge around the change efforts, that they actually didn't bother to make any changes. And I'm sure if you reflect upon family or peers at work, you actually realize that there are some what we call laggards that represent this particular picture here. There are people that no matter how much change is happening around them, they just won't make that change. And I think this is a good diagram to demonstrate to you that the reason why it is very difficult to change. And I'm sure some of you can appreciate that when you got your new iPhone or a new gadget, or even when you purchase something new within the home, like a smart TV, for some of us, it actually takes us quite a little bit of time to get, used to it, even though it's something that's supposed to be positive, something that's supposed to make life easier. So change is very, very difficult. All right, we have a diagram here. I think this is more like a warning to us, right? To say that if you do not change, you become obsolete. We have a few companies that we've put up there. Kodak, they did not jump into the digital revolution that was happening at that time. We all know what happened to Nokia, issues around modernization of software, BlackBerry as well. And I'm sure for some of you, it's quite embarrassing to think back that, used to ask for the BBM pin from individuals so that you can actually share some communication with them around BlackBerry. They also didn't jump onto the bandwagon of the technological revolution that was happening there. Blockbuster could have been the Netflix that we see right now. They just totally ignored it. They stuck to the traditional ways of doing business. And more recently, we've seen Toys R Us. We have quite one or two branches operating in South Africa here where we are, but worldwide that is closed. And we all know the opportunity that IBM missed on. They thought the main business should be selling computers. They didn't actually realize that there's a much bigger revolution around software. So just a few lessons. You see the HUCMI logo there. That's just purely for presentation purposes, okay? We're not part of that bandwagon. All right. All right, so I think something also that, comes to, that I put some thought around is that for the first time in many, many years, we have 5 generations operating within the same space, whether it's work, in society, we have for the first time 5 generations. And you can almost imagine the chaos that exists with such a varied group of, generation like we have. So we've got the baby boomers, we've got the, Generation X, Generation Z, the millennials, we've got the Generation Alpha as well. And I'm sure you all have some in-depth experience with the Generation Alpha, especially quite an interesting group right there that has come to the fore. So the speed of change itself has become quite great, and therefore the need to pay attention to change management. All right, I have a video here that I'd like to play for you. Just give me a second to sort of make sure that my sound is optimized. Here we go. There's also emergence of a new power customer that we've ignored for a very long time. Take a look at this and we can discuss shortly after.
If you work in marketing, you better start upping your game.
Because you haven't seen anything like us yet.
In just 10 years from now, we'll be buying and influencing buying
In ways that will confound you.
We won't just watch your ads, we'll expect smart, tailored content based on our social graphs.
Tailored for me.
Me,
Me.
and me.
We want to interact with it as we watch it. Not just with touch, but with voice,
With gesture.
With intent. You better embed everything that is featured with additional information, social APIs, and e-commerce functionality.
And we mean everything.
everything.
Everything. The car,
The skirt,
the hotel,
the app.
Because we expect to double tap on anything to get more information.
Don't worry. You'll offset the cost by on-selling any leads to those data aggregator type companies.
We'll spread it through our networks.
And co-create with you.
and when we do buy, there are normally more of us than there are of you. We can change your business
In one trade.
as long as the deal is on.
Augmented reality.
Will be the new reality.
AR apps will almost function like special skills to help us navigate reality more effectively.
You wait and see what the iPhone of 2021 looks like. The clue is in the name.
And you better get used to paying us.
Our browsing, influencing, and purchasing data.
We'll make some of us pretty rich.
But don't overstep the mark. Otherwise, we'll block you.
Mass blocks kill brands overnight and keep you up all night. So if you work in marketing,
You better start upping your game. Because you haven't seen anything like us yet.
Okay, so just your observations around that. That is a scary group that we've traditionally ignored. We didn't actually realize the impact in terms of business planning, but we now have to incorporate them in terms of business planning in the modern day. Kind of scary, isn't it? Any reactions to this? You can mute.
Marlon, there was a comment from Peter. He said the alpha generation will change the game.
That is very true. Very, very true. Yeah, and I think traditionally when we've planned, incorporated in terms of future plans, we've not really included them in those plans. Kind of reminds me of there's a little lady in Germany, the 16-year-old. What's her name? Florence?
Greta Thunberg.
Yes. Very difficult to unmute that one. Presidents are scared of her, and she comes in from that alpha generation. All right, any more observations around the video before I move on? All right.
Nothing else in the chat.
Okay, excellent. All right, Florence, can you see the top? Because
There's a gray block. I'm not sure.
okay, keep high. All right, here we go.
It's
That
gone.
better?
It's gone now, yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. So just to move in, why change management as well? Just to carry on with that discussion, we find that there are many surveys that have been done, but according to this PM survey done in 2013, they found that the top reasons for failure to implement PMO are the following: resistance, cultural issues, lack of sponsorship, lack of change management, and they make up 75% of the reasons why there was failure to implement projects. So very important, you know, and there are many studies that back this up from Gartner as well, you know, from some global institutions, and they give more or less the same picture. And this is the reason why, again, we need to give special attention to change management. Now, other studies, again, done by the PMI, there were studies done, you know, to kind of demonstrate, you know, what is the success factor around, you know, the project dimensions like budget, time, you know, meeting of goals. They found that without change management, projects only managed to achieve 36% of the budget. And with change management, you know, almost double, 63%. In terms of time, it was only 34% meeting the time allocated, projected time, and 64%, you know, with change management integrated. And in terms of meeting the stated goals, the mandate of the project, we found that only 31%, you know, was met without change management. And on the flip side, more than double, 65% of the goals were achieved with change management. So again, making an illustration of the point earlier. So more and more we're finding that, you know, change managers, you know, when you enter meetings, and I'm sure some of you have observed, you know, it's very different from maybe 10 years ago, where you, as a change manager, you needed to understand just your space. You know, you spoke your language, you kept almost in your little corner, isolated from the rest of the project team. It's not this case anymore, right? Change managers now need to speak the language of the project professionals, and vice versa. The project leaders need to learn how to deal with the human factor in the change processes, all right? So normally there's a healthy question asked on some of the projects I've been on, where you get asked, look, there's no budget, so therefore we're not going to incorporate change management. I've got some interesting news for project managers who think like that. Whenever you are doing a project or any change or transformation, there will always be need for change management. So hence, if there is no budget that cannot be raised for change managers, this is actually the more reason why the project managers need to understand and do it themselves as well. And this is part of the third generation of change management that HCMBOK represents. And we will talk a little bit about that later on. So challenging projects, you know, it's not the first time that they've been around for a very long time. You know, we know for us to come up with this, the tombs, you know, the pyramids in ancient Egypt, in other areas as well across the globe, there had to be some degree of project management. So it's not anything new. It's something that has been in existence for quite a while. This is the old DNA of project management. You find that in the old school, the project manager would be given a scope, what they need to do, the cost allocated for that project, as well as the timeline, timescales. This is not the case anymore, right? More and more, I think there was a discovery that you cannot ignore the people factor. So in the 5th edition of the PMBOK, there was actually an inclusion, I think this is 2014, there was actually an inclusion of the stakeholder as an important aspect of project management. So instead of just having the traditional scope, cost, time, there was now the inclusion. The project management institution now started talking a little bit more about the stakeholder, which by nature is change in itself, change management in itself. I'm now going to show you, you know, a diagram. This just illustrates change as a journey. I think this is something very familiar to most of you. All right, this is a diagram that shows the journey of change. The value of despair there, you know, if your role as a change practitioner is to manage that valley of despair, that valley is always going to happen, by the way. And I think my comment around that is that if we were to show the project stakeholders this diagram right from the beginning, I think you can somehow manage expectations in terms of, you know, benefits, when benefits can be realized. Because what normally happens is that, you know, as soon as the project is implemented, there's some difficult stakeholders that want to see the benefits almost immediately. And some antagonists actually want to close a project because they cannot almost see the benefits immediately, but we know this is a journey. So I think the one message I have for everyone here is that right at the beginning of the project, get some consensus around this particular picture that when you do change, there will be a valley of despair, a depression. The whole idea of having change management practice around this is actually to control how far the valley goes down. All right, because at this stage, people are relearning, they're transitioning into a new state. And by virtue of that, they will be slower in terms of executing some of the jobs or the functions. So very important. I think that's my key lesson when it comes to this particular diagram. Yeah, so I don't think I'll do any justice if I didn't talk about, you know, just a bit of history around change management, where it started, you know, some of the inspiration that we get, and also where we come in, you know, from an HCMBOK perspective as well. So the first generation, we all know Kurt Levin. I hope I pronounced him correctly. It is Kurt Levin, eh, Flo?
Yes,
right.
I believe it is Levin. Yes.
Okay, all right. So he developed a change model involving 3 steps: unfreezing, changing, refreezing. The process of change entails creating perception that a change is needed, then moving towards new design level behavior, and finally solidifying that new behavior as a new norm. All right, so that was Kurt Levin. We had Darrell Corner in the later 1990s. He came up with, he's got a book there called Managing the Speed of Change from a change crisis. So he's the gentleman who coined the term burning platform. And we also have Kota. We know his 8 steps. We start off with buy-in. You know, that I think the first step was that suggested that for change to be successful, 75% of the company's management needs to buy into the change. In other words, you really have to work on the first step because that influences all the other additional 7 steps that come through. And then later on, almost at the same time, so they represent the first generation. So moving into the second generation, we had your more professional companies creating change models. We had the big 5, you know, your McKinseys, your EYs, KPMGs, Deloitte, etc. They created like change models, quite prescriptive. They came up with templates, you know, an explanation of why a certain thing has to be done in a certain way. And you find that the language that they used there, it was quite difficult for, you know, everyone else who's outside of the change community to understand. You know, they used very, very special language. It had that academic inspiration, hermetic language. It prescribed what to do and prescribed also the steps that you need to follow in any change. Now we know that obviously as we moved on, change doesn't quite happen like that. You know, you cannot follow a prescribed. You actually need to keep your pulse on what's required at any one particular time for any project. And also, I think when you have that integration with the rest of the project, it needs to be simplified. So around 2012, that's when HUCMI came in as well. They were looking at the 3rd generation of change management. And the whole thinking around this was that change management should be for all people. You know, it should not just be limited to, you know, the change consultants who have had this amazing training. And it needs to be practical in its approach, simple, you know, what to do as well as how to do it, as well as strategy. It needs to cover strategic management changes integrated within the project management as well. So quite empowering in terms of the 3rd generation. And we find that in 2013, the PMI actually brought in recognized change management as the 10th knowledge area as well. So this was the emergence of change. And I think this is quite important, I think, to set about the scene for the rest of the presentation that we will be giving you and where HCMBOK comes in. All right. we're finding more and more that you know, your stakeholder C-level expectations for IT professionals is that they should have some change leadership, you know, to become an effective partner in the leading change management projects. So it's not about the technical outputs. There's more of a people aspect in terms of what's expected of their roles. And excuse me, this came from the DNA of the CIO early in 2014 by Ernst & Young. And similar studies, I'm sure you'll appreciate that, you know, professionals at C-level, not just the CIO, excuse me about that, have had a mandate placed upon them to actually understand the people factor a little bit more, right? So this is part of the new paradigm of project management. A successful project is the one that delivers strategic goals, right? So it's no longer about you know, the technical output. It's about the transformational aspects, leadership, innovation strategies, as well as keeping your tab and moving with the rapidly changing world as well. Oh, excuse me. Well, it's a bit cold here in South Africa. We've just started the winter side of things, so my apologies for that. Right. So just moving on with the new paradigms, you know, around you know, change management. I think as a natural outflow from the, you know, what I've just spoke about, the third generation of change management, we have new perspectives that HCMBOK covers in quite a great detail. One of these is what we call anticipatory grief. All right, so that is the anticipation that something bad is about to happen. And if you know, the anticipation of something bad going to happen is just as bad as that terrible scenario happening itself. So they found early in hospital studies in the First World War, especially, they did hospital studies that were inspired by you know, the god of death, Thanatos. They found that before soldiers went to war, some of them died at death before the actual battle, before they actually faced battle, and the depression was immense to the point where some of them actually became immobile. They could not put them in the war front because they would pose a danger to the rest of the squadrons. So in terms of trying to unravel this phenomenon, they did a few hospital studies. They found that, you know, in hospital psychology, where there's an imminence of death, and then the death occurs, and there's grief, there are certain stages that we go through that also influence organizational anticipatory grief. These are as follows. In the organizational environment, when there's that imminence of death, people realize that a change is about to occur. All right. Let's say, especially around now with the pandemic, you know, I think there was a bit of a concern, I think natural concern from everyone around, you know, how is my job safe? You know, because of this pandemic, is my company making money? So you find that people realize that, you know, there was a change. And I think the pandemic is a good example of that. Some people enter a state of anticipatory grief. And they start imagining, you know, this is going to mess me up. There's anxiety. There's a buildup of the worst scenarios that they can ever imagine. Now you find that when the changes are implemented, some maybe realize that, okay, my job has changed a bit. There are a bit of KPIs that are reformulated. Some people go into what we call, organizational death. All right. These are normally like your antagonists. Some people are just terrified, anxiety has built up. They've actually realized that the change has happened. And after a few days or a few weeks after that event has taken place, there's what we call organizational grief. Now, at this stage, the dangerous instinct for some people is survival, and that motivates resistance. And we all know that most of the resistance, the antagonists, also start showing up at this particular stage. So this is one of the unique aspects of HCMBOK training certification program, how we relate this and use this to manage any anticipatory grief that may occur as a result of especially the bigger projects that you may undergo within your workplaces. All right, are there any questions before I open up for a group discussion?
Nothing specific right now, Marlon. There was just a question around the gray blocks. I explained that when someone enters the room, it pops up a message on the host side, and then it shows as a gray block on our side. And then as soon as you remove it, then the gray block goes away.
Yeah, that's fine. I think what I'll do, I'll just put all the hosting permissions to you so that it doesn't come to me as well. So apologies for that.
No problem. But when we switch, we'll switch again. When we switch to it's fine. So I'll carry on here. There aren't any other questions at this point, but it looks like you've got some empathetic people in the audience. They suggested maybe get some water.
Yes. When I discuss this, my apologies. When I discuss this, I am going to, block my video, just pop in and get some water as well.
No, they're feeling for you. See.
Oh, they're feeling for me. Wow.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay. So if there aren't questions, I just want to. I think the issue around anticipatory grief is quite a big one, especially for the current times with the pandemic.
Sorry, Marlon. Yeah. We've got one raised hand from I think Syed. Mm-hmm. Would you like to unmute and go ahead?
Please go ahead.
I'm going to see if I can unmute. Syed, you should be able to unmute yourself, but maybe you're struggling with that. Unless you want to put your question in the chat. Marlon, I think carry on, and then because Syed should be able to unmute, but maybe there's a problem with the.
All right, cool. So I guess I can stop sharing for now because I would like to see everyone else, for this part here. But I just want to ask, have any of you experienced anticipatory grief, or have you seen it within your organization or your project space that you're working in? We just want to take about 5 minutes, I think, just for you to share your experience. And I think maybe just delve into a little bit more around that particular scenario for us. Would that be okay? Before I get my water. All right. So if you can, just for the next 5 minutes, talk us through any scenarios of anticipatory grief. And if you can, share your experience with us. Okay, I'm going to stop. I'd like to see everyone.
There we go.
I would say that probably the most common is timing, right? When you already know that it's not going to be enough time to do what they are planning to do, and you see that that is coming and you are not going to be able to prepare the people enough in that timeline. So that's one of that particular moments.
Thank you for that. Marlon, are you?
Yeah.
You there? Okay. Cool.
I'm here. I did get some water, believe it or not.
Marlon.
Okay. Yes.
Marlon, we used to say that silence also communicate. There is a huge gap between a specific event when you start thinking about change something and when you start communicating it. And during this phase, what we can see is anticipatory organizational grief, which means people talking around on the radio corridor, on WhatsApp. They are just speculating about what's about to come. They don't know exactly, but they start suffering. And this is important for us in HCMBOK because there is a lot of macro activities that we developed before we start to this process of organizational anticipatory grief. And in order to avoid it, because it's caused a lot of suffering for people, it can impact the level of engagement. People start to be prepared for the worst and taking a non-optimistic perspective for the change, which means resistance. That's the point here.
That's it. That's it. Anyone else with any examples? No, we've quite a good group here.
Yeah, we do. Marlon, maybe I can give an environmental example, which I'm sure wherever we are in the world, we're seeing different signs of. Some of it is obviously within the pandemic. If I think of South Africa, where we are, in the past few months, everyone thought, okay, finally, we're getting over this and it's getting better and we're going back to life as we know it. And then now there are murmurings of wave 3. People are going, no, don't tell me about this. I don't want to hear about it. And it is anticipatory grief in this case, but it's obviously justified. However, it can result in denial. People saying no, yeah, I don't want to hear that, and it may never come. And we did this in wave 1, we did this in wave 2, and it's very interesting to watch the environmental behavior, which then trickles into the workplace, trickles into the schools, trickles into the home. So I thought that was a very very pertinent example.
That's it. All right. And maybe asking the question in a different way, has the pandemic had any impact in terms of security, people feeling secure? Has it had a negative impact? If so, are there any examples maybe you might have? Okay. I've got Peter here, who mentions that it's one of our previous employees. It was announced the org structure was going to change. Some people instantly started to search for new jobs and leave. Quite a natural instinct, I guess, right? Wow. And then we've got Paula here saying that in this pandemic scenario, uncertainty about the future of hybrid work is having a large impact on employees. All right. So there has been that. And I think this is probably representative of everyone across the globe, right? All right. Great stuff. Okay, so I think there's a preference of using the chat more than unmuting and speaking. Yeah. Okay. All right. No, thanks a lot, guys. I will carry on. I've got a few more slides before I hand over. Peter says good luck in that. I don't know what you're referring to, Peter.
Jenna said, I began a whole new career plan at 40. I think you missed one chat message.
Excellent. Okay. And have any of you made any other changes around you? I mean, just as an interesting question right there, as a result of this. Okay. All right, thank you. I'll commence and I'll carry on. All right. So I'm just going to talk to you about the the structure of HCMBOK. I will start off with the initial areas that we normally deal with. Florence, would take up the rest and give you a snippet of what the HCMBOK structure is all about. We do have, as part of the HCMBOK structure, right at the top there, we've got 6 recurring macro activities. So these are activities that happen right from the project start to closing and production. Production probably called in some cases project maintenance or the sustaining stages. But we start off with planning and managing communication. So here we delve into, how do you structure your comms, how to build two-way feedback into your communication, how to listen as part of that communication as well. And this happens right throughout. Creating team spirit and ensuring reinforcement dynamics, also a very important part and parcel of the change management journey, and certainly is a very important part of the HCMBOK structure as well. So this basically talks about how you involve the team, make sure that the spirits, the morale, the dynamics around the team are healthy from the beginning right up to the end. We've got encouraging participatory processes. Whenever people feel that they have their DNA on a project, there is buy-in, and there's almost like they protect the outcomes and they become an interested party with regards to the outcome of the change management cycle. So this happens again right from the beginning, right up to the end, and we do give you an overview of how to go about that particular process as well. Managing conflict, motivation, stress, and behaviors. We do know that conflict does arise at certain stages, especially, but nevertheless, it's important to make sure that we manage it right from the beginning, going on to the end, as well as the stress and behaviors as well. The same goes for that. Encouraging creativity, innovation. Projects that really do well have got a kind of environment where each team member is encouraged to be creative, is encouraged to come up with new ideas. They're not afraid of making mistakes as well. The project leadership is very supportive of them. So you find that it's something that is quite important, and it makes your change journey quite easy if you incorporate creativity and innovation. The HCMBOK structure, we do give an outline on how to go around that. And we've got a few examples that we will mention in the coming slides. Managing stakeholder engagement, we all know that. And again, something that needs to happen right from the beginning until the end. Having mentioned that, we do have activities that are just specific for initiation and planning. Acquisition stage, that is a stage when we bring on new players, the vendor. Execution stage, we all know. Implementation stage, closing, as well as production. All right, so I will give you a few examples. I'll start off with initiation and planning. So as part of the HCMBOK structure, I think we give quite a lot of attention to this part here, because this is the stage that influences, the team's engagement the most, right? The change management should influence project strategy right from the beginning. And maybe by way of question here, how many of you who are in change management have only maybe forced to come onto the project scene right in the middle? Because maybe the project team is saying to you, we need to figure out the business case, we need to put our ducks in a row, and then you need to come in later on. Has that ever happened to anyone? All right. That should be avoided at all costs, because you start setting the scene for change management, and that integration that we spoke about of change management into the project management planning, it needs to happen. It becomes very difficult, almost impossible to do so at later stages.
Yeah. Marlon, there's a comment from Teboko who said, or even right at the end, that sometimes change management gets brought in right at the end.
Yeah. And you'll find that at this stage as well, my personal experience, and I'm sure quite a number of you as well, is that you also have the opportunity to educate the project team in terms of what the change management is all about. What you need to do from a change management point of view. So there's quite a lot of, up and down, speaking to the sponsor, engaging with the project team, clarifying, the expected outcomes from a change management point of view as well. So this is very difficult to do at the end. And if we are forced to come in at the end and do this, whatever we do becomes a nice to do, because this sets the scene for everything else that needs to happen with regards to the change management journey. All right. So some of the activities that, are undertaken here, it's, mapping, defining and assessing stakeholders. Your initial impact assessment also happens at this particular stage. And these activities kind of shape the picture, the journey and kind of helps to integrate with the rest of the project management team as well. Certainly makes it much easier. Right, any comments around this?
There's a comment around, the chat is just making comments around when change management comes in. And Amberish said, we're still in many cases, change management is not well thought through. So it's more firefighting than planning. Yeah, that's it. That is very true. And I'm sure it actually kind of leads to the next point slide here, that we actually need to, every change, we actually need to articulate it as a project. You know, it needs to have the same flow as any other project does have. So we've got within change management, planning, acquisition, we've got execution, implementation, and sustenance as well. Needs to be a part of that. So it needs every change that we are going through, whether small, big, you know, there are, like I said earlier on, some projects where the fuel is too little, maybe it's a fix here and there. It should be, you know, there will be impact on people, and it needs to be articulated as part of a project. So very, very important, right? So some of the things that we also do in terms of the early stages is that, you know, you need to come up with a sponsor. Sponsorship is quite important. Some of the rules, you know, around sponsorship is that you must have one sponsor. Too many sponsors, you know, would have different expectations, and you need to have someone available throughout the change journey. Very important. I think in some cases where I've dealt with projects, you find that the sponsorship person kind of elevates their role quite high, that they don't actually realize that they do have a role to play. So part and parcel of what we need to do from a change management point of view is to educate the sponsor in terms of their role. Do not take it for granted that the sponsor knows what to do. All right. So very important. We cover that in more detail, but this is one of the other most important stages that happens in the initiating and planning stage of the HCMBOK structure. Mapping and classifying stakeholders. I like this diagram here. Can you tell me, is that cat going up or down? What do you think? Peter said it depends.
It depends. That's a safe answer, Peter. Too safe. We need a definitive answer.
There are a couple of ups in the chat. Somebody had a comment, wanted to say something. I think you can unmute yourself. Sure. I'm not sure who it was though. Okay, so there's a few ups and then depends. Two depends on your perspective.
Yeah. And there is a reason why we have this picture here when it comes to talking about classifying mapping stakeholders, right? You don't know.
Sorry, Marlon, we have a hand up as well.
Sure, let me hear.
Mohammed, I think. You want to go ahead, Mohammed? If you can just unmute yourself. Should be able to.
All right.
Okay, no, that didn't happen.
Okay.
It's okay, we'll be back.
Yeah, so there is a reason, you know, there's a reason why we put this right here, because you do not know where stakeholders lie at any particular time. You don't know whether they're coming with you or going down. And that's why we need to apply, we don't do stakeholder management from the beginning, ignore it, go up to the end. And I'm sure I have a situation where in some cases, I think that a stakeholder is with me. It comes to a meeting and you find that their contribution is actually going against, you know, what you had planned. Or you take it for granted that they've supported you in the first place. They will carry on supporting you throughout the change. So people are dynamic by nature and people do change. We don't operate in a vacuum. Whatever you see at the beginning of the project in terms of your relationship with stakeholders, it will not be the same during or even after, when the project closes. So it's quite important that we keep an eye on this. It's a continuous process. It's a dynamic process, as we say at the bottom right there, and requires, your stakeholder map requires continuous updating because stakeholders do shift by nature. And it's quite an important aspect, I think, of the initial stages of our initiation and planning. All right, any comment around stakeholders?
Yes, there is a comment to say we need to educate all stakeholders involved, leadership sponsor, on the importance of change management in the initial stages. I guess it's a follow-on from the
initial
discussion.
slide.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's very, very important, and I think just a few slides, that help us, around stakeholder management. Just one more slide, rather. When we map and classify stakeholders, we need to promote frequent interactions and assess the expectations, behaviors, and the level of engagement. So expectations, what would they like to hear? In the case that I mentioned earlier on, where I found someone that one of the project leaders got along with, ignored them for a little bit, and then they were quite antagonistic towards what I was doing. And the reason for that, when I got to sit down with them, was that they wanted to just be copied in terms of interaction that I was having with the rest of the team. So sometimes it could be simple things like that, but you are only able to pick it up if you have that frequent interaction with the stakeholders, and also asking what their expectations are, monitoring their behaviors, as well as the level of engagement as well. So ignore stakeholder interaction at your own peril. I've learned that, from a few projects that I worked on. You need to list everyone who's either directly or indirectly involved in the change, including those both inside and outside of the organization. Determine whether they will be approached individually or as a group. In some cases, you have limitations in terms of dealing with the outside. In the case here with the big organizations we deal with, they have a marketing department, that has access to the outside stakeholders. You need to make sure that they are closing that gap, and you do follow-ups as well, in terms of that. So very important, to keep the conversations going. Classify stakeholders according to the following criteria: capacity to influence the project decisions and direction, probable change supporters, non-supporters. And from that picture, you also have an idea in terms of which stakeholders you need to prioritize on, and give direction to your stakeholder engagement a little bit more. All right. Anything else there? Any other comments?
Just a comment to say many leaders realize, and we're still really talking about the importance of the link between project management and change management. So Paula said many leaders realize their project needs change management when they face the rejection of the people whom the change is made. Yeah. So it is essential that leaders are aware that project management and change management are indivisible. Can't separate them.
That's it. That's it. That's it.
Powerful.
I like that.
Yeah.
That is powerful. Thank you so much for that contribution. All right. So I'm just going to summarize a few more slides before I hand over to Florence. At the end of the day, when we have gone through all the aspects of the initiation and planning stages, we build up the change management strategic plan. So as part of the HCMBOK structure, and as part of the initiation and planning, we talk about sponsorship, the vision, objective, the goals and matrix, elements of organizational culture, project team assignment, development plan, antagonism factors, what brings up antagonism on that project, engagement factors, what helps to create a good team spirit, what helps to engage people, map of the stakeholders, which you spoke about very briefly, clarifying the roles, responsibilities. Here we cover the RACI metrics as well. We also talk about the ordinary communication plan. We say ordinary here because whatever you draw up at the initial stages of your plan in terms of communication, by the very nature of any project, you will be required to do some ad hoc communication, which can be built into the ordinary communication plan as you proceed with the project. The project management structure, which talks about governance, who does what. Here we also cover, what we call induced protagonism. So in some cases where you find there are some powerful antagonists, you make them part of an advisory committee. Or in some cases, if it's a lower level, you make those people like maybe part of your change champion network. And when you do that, they actually have no choice but to support the project. When we talk about project management structure, we also cover what we call induced protagonism. And we use some techniques like the two that I've just mentioned. We also talk about the kickoff plan, the timing of the kickoff plan. So kickoff is quite important in the sense that it kind of sets the scene. You have an opportunity to observe some behaviors, who's for the project, against the project, some of the fears. You also have a two-way, feedback mechanism as well. And you get a very good picture at the initial stages of the challenges that you will face, going down the road with that particular project. The action plan, would also come up at this particular stage. Some of the quick wins, we like to deal with quick wins in the HCMBOK structure because they provide an impetus for the long-term wins as well. And it kind of helps to build morale and encourage positive team spirit at early stages. So budgets, very important. How many of you have been caught out? I have, where we have not made enough provision for all the activities that we need to do. And it becomes very difficult to ask for money somewhere down the line. Budget discussions happen at the initial stages because it's very difficult to make any accommodations after the fact. So budgets, here we talk about the planned budget for your activities, your celebration. If you're going to be rewarding people on project success, this has to be built into the overall project budget. So again, something that happens right at the beginning of the project. And then a map of the risk inherent to the human factor. So we do a change impact assessment, organizational impact assessment, and we will pick up the risks that, I know sometimes when we do change organizational impact, we're going to pick up technical risks, we're going to pick up a lot of other risks. But our focus, if you're a change practitioner, is to really focus on those risks that are inherent in the human factor. So your people risks, in other words. And then you also need to build in your change sustaining strategy. Most projects do not work because we have not put in place a way to sustain some of the changes. And we know that a great deal of the changes that are happening after the project has been closed, or even later on in the production stages. So quite important as well to actually build up for that and plan for that right from the beginning. And some of the things that we do here is to look at, after the project closes, who are some of the key people that we need to maintain for the sustaining stages of the project. So maybe just to go back on goals and metrics, it's very important to have quantitative as well as qualitative measures of the project. It makes it easier to base your quick wins and long-term benefits on that as well. Projects that do not have clear matrices, it's also very difficult to engage other stakeholders as well in terms of what you are trying to achieve. So goals and matrices, very important. And the other thing, maybe just one last thing, two last things on your left-hand side there, elements of organizational culture. What are the key behaviors we need to do away with? How do you manage, some of the culture variables, the observable behavior, the ethos of how the company operates, how we go around making sure that the culture we have is supportive of the change that we're going to put in place. Again, this happens right at the beginning, at the initiation and planning stages. And the other one, which is very important, when we deal with projects, sometimes, I think most of the time actually, we have people coming in from other areas, you know, that have been seconded on the project. We have people, maybe some are 100% committed to that particular project. Let's say, you know, if it's a long term, maybe for 1 year. The one thing that every project member who has been seconded worries about is what is going to happen at the end of the project. Is my job going to be secure? Will I still have a job? Am I going to get the training that I was promised? Because the main reason we found is that when people you know, put up their hands to be on the project, they want to learn new skills as well. Has that development plan been put in place? Is that very clear in terms of what they should come out with from a technical point of view or from a behavioral point of view? So if you do not have this in place, you're going to have a lot of anxiety and a lot of unhappy people. Some might actually start to have anticipatory grief because they start thinking their jobs are not there after the project. Or in the worst case scenario, you have people maybe that are just present. You know, we talk about presenteeism, where you get project team members that are there, but not doing much because their focus is really on protecting where they're coming from. So they're not really spending time and they're not really giving you their best because you've not assured them of what their life would be after the project. So that last item on your left-hand side of the screen, project team assignment and development plan, is very, very important, as much as all these other factors are. Any questions around the change management strategic plan?
Nothing in the chat, Marlon. Maybe if I can just make a comment about what you said just now around the project team assignment. One of the behaviors that I have seen in past projects in my experience is you create a situation where people start to not want to share the information they have or the value they bring to their project because they are afraid of becoming not needed, especially in technical projects. So they'll hold on to that code, they'll hold on to everything because you haven't made it clear where they're going. So they need to make themselves indispensable. So when you ask them to do knowledge transfer, you won't get it because they don't know where they're going next. So if they keep themselves indispensable, they hope they'll be there for longer. So that is a behavior that I have seen when people are not sure what their future prospects look like.
That's it. That's it. That's it. Thank you so much for that, Florence. All right. So all those elements we will cover initiation and planning in terms of our structure. We go into a whole lot of detail around each one of those dimensions that is mentioned there. The next slides is just really an expansion of this particular slide. Just to give you a few examples in terms of our HCMBOK canvas from the plan that we spoke about. So it's more or less like our toolkit, right? So we have something that looks like this: project identity, sponsorship structure, vision of the future state of the organization. We always insist that there is clarity between, or almost like a clear line of sight between what the project is going to do and the vision of the future state of the organization. If there is no alignment, it normally would become a problem in terms of buy-in. So also going on to the other areas, the purpose of the change, why we're changing, the objective of the project, what is changing, and also clarity around the project management methodology. So this is just one of the HCMBOK canvases. The other one looks at main expectations. You know, these are expectations, you know, kept during the early working sessions to align and mobilize leaders and interviews, and also interactions with the sponsor as well. They'll give input into main expectations. Goals, matrix, or the changes. Spoke about qualitative measures. We spoke about quantitative measures. Very, very important because they guide future conversation and they also guide the quick wins. Project organizational charts, I spoke about that. That's just around you know, roles, responsibilities, project governance, and you can use this at this particular stage, like what you say, to to have what we call induced protagonism. So people who are antagonistic, bring them as part and parcel of the advisory structure at these early stages. You will find that by virtue of being part and parcel of that structure, the antagonism actually does go down quite a bit. And I use the same for the Change Champion Network as well at a lower level. Just carrying on with our canvas, we also look at the characteristics of organizational culture, its effects on the change efforts, the maturity to deal with loss, how has the organization dealt with, with similar projects, or if something went bad, what is the maturity? How soon do they recover? All right. So we deal with this at two levels, at individual level, as well as the total organizational level as well. We'll look at the team's level of confidence in the project leaders. Very important that if the leadership that you have, people do not have confidence in, that's something that needs to be raised as a risk right from the beginning, and a change needs to happen there. Not a popular move to make, but if you do not sort this out at this early stage, nothing is going to happen by magic. It will actually get worse. All right. And then team's level of confidence in the organization as well. What sort of credibility does the organization have dealing with projects of this nature? I spoke about antagonism factors. We detail them in our canvas. Engagement factors. We also have a preliminary investigation of the main stakeholders and level of engagement. Please note it says preliminary because this continues throughout. All right. And then your change management action plan as well. So we do have quite a number of these, canvases as part of the overall strategic change management plan, HCMBOK strategic change management plan. All right, so that's it from my side. Before I hand over to Florence, who is going to wow you. All right, and she will not be coughing like I was. All right, any questions before I hand over?
You're so funny, Marlon. So there's a question, a comment in the chat, I think from Basha. She was just saying how they love the canvas, that it is really effective and simple to use. But you can check in the chat now that you stopped sharing. She said, I love areas covered in these templates, simple and practical, but very powerful.
That's it.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Awesome. Let me just share my screen, but maybe if there are any comments while I'm transitioning.
Yeah. So what Florence is going to cover is normally what we cover in the second module, the recurring macro activities. So she'll delve into what I think is quite relevant for these modern times. Florence, I see you already.
Just about what I would like to do before I get into the slide, and this is something we always encourage people to do to make sure that you stay refreshed. If you're sitting down, just stand up and stretch. So we're not going to do a break because of the time we have, but stand up, stretch a bit, simply to get your blood circulation going. Then this is something we always recommend with virtual sessions, that do some stretching. So I hope that you're all sitting there doing some stretching, because I've just done my stretcher. See, there we go. Okay. Right, so we're going to now delve into the more of the module 2 around HCMBOK. And I always say in projects, I always have to correct people when they refer to change management or to people, the area around the human factor, they refer to it as soft skills. They're not soft skills. So a new word you will walk away with today is essential skills. They are essential skills. That is what a human factor is, because without them, you are not going to be able to land change properly. So just starting off with that. Okay, so what I'll take you through now is some of the areas around stress and some of the areas around creativity, which I'm sure you're going to enjoy. So if we look at what we have on the slide now, it's an illustrative graph of what happens in a project. And I'm sure that most of you have seen this in practice within projects, where in the early stages of the project, in the planning, when we're doing acquisition with suppliers, in the initial execution of activities, the stress levels are not as high. Where the stress levels get highest is in implementation. Some of you will know and use the terms go live if it's a system implementation, or if it is a gradual rollout. But what you'll find is you start to get increased levels of stress within the teams. And you start to see signs of it. As the project starts to close off and we're getting more into production and sustain, you start to see a reduction in stress levels. And this is very key from a change management point of view. And all the activities within the HCMBOK are designed to try and mitigate the stress that we know is going to come at different parts of the project. So if we look at some of the areas around the stress curve, so stress can be a positive force when it drives enthusiasm. So we call it eustress. It's known as eustress. So you know when you are rolling out a project and everybody is so motivated and the developers are working through the night to code and it's go, go, go all the way. That's great. Eustress is a positive sort of stress. However, you don't want to get to the top of the hill here and there's been no rest. The teams have not had any rest. So even when they're excited, it's like being an entrepreneur. You're very excited about your business, but you can still burn out even when you're enjoying yourself. So excessive stress is dangerous for the project. This is what we watch for. This is what we mitigate for within the whole change management space. And it can affect motivation. It can affect productivity. The other side of stress, which is the negative side, would be distress. So distress is negative stress. And it frequently leads to high rates of, and Marlon mentioned this before, presenteeism or absenteeism. Due to either illness, people get ill, people get depressed, people get very anxious. People start to have physical manifestations of the stress. And this is something that really can cause a lot of long-term damage, not only to the project, but to individuals who have been impacted by this sort of stress. And I have been part of projects where this kind of stress manifested, and you could see in some cases, and we had this especially in technology projects, where people would have heart attacks from stress. So the last thing you want is to actually put people's lives at risk because we're not managing the stress appropriately. And Marlon spoke of presenteeism and explained this, where the person is there. They're present, but they are not really present. You can't really engage with them. They are disengaged. That's the other term that we use. Absenteeism obviously is, the person is continually not available. And that could be because of stress signs. And burnout is devastating. So burnout, I think, if I'm not mistaken, within the medical circles, it has now been classified as a medical condition. And burnout is then treated as a medical condition. Your body literally shuts down. So the stress curve is something that we monitor for and watch quite a bit. Are there any comments or at this point about the stress curve? Because I'd like us to get into a little bit of a discussion around this. So in the practice that we're going to do, and I'm going to stop sharing shortly and put everybody into breakout rooms. What we would like to do, and you can join the conversation if you are in a position to join the conversation. I understand that some people may just be joining from their phone and not from the Zoom itself, but let's see how we go. So what we would like to unpack a bit more, because I think with the participants around the session, you have a lot to share with each other, and we all have a lot to learn. So one of the questions is, what techniques have you used to manage stress on projects? And many people will have different ways in which they do this. And we'd like to just have a bit of a discussion around this, techniques you've used to manage stress. What we'll do now, I see there's a comment here from Paula. Yeah, companies are dealing with burnout due to the pandemic. So the pandemic has added additional stress to normal standard project stress. The hybrid working environment, what that means, what it doesn't mean, and everything that's changing around that. So it's a very big topic, and that's why we'd like to take some time to go just a few minutes to have a discussion. Marlon, had you created the breakout rooms already, or should I create them?
I hadn't, Flo.
I'm happy to do it. I'll do it quickly. Yeah. So we'll have about 4 in each room. Let's make it 5. And it will assign everyone in a just automatic way. It's random assignment. So I'm going to open up the rooms, and the only question you're needing to answer is how you have managed or handled stress within project scenarios. And we'll check in on you guys, and we'll give everyone about, shall we say, about 5 minutes to have a bit of a discussion. We might extend it to 6. So if everybody's okay with that, are there any questions around the breakout process? You go into the breakout room. Once we get to the time, we close off the room. So within the room, you're just a small group of people in there. Then you can also get to introduce yourselves to each other and have a bit of a conversation. So I'm going to open up the rooms now. It is 11:18, and I'll give you guys a prompt to be back by 11:24. Is that okay with everyone? I see nothing in the chat, so I'm going to open up the rooms. So it's just as you're answering, you're just going to answer how you manage stress on projects, and let's do some sharing.
Yeah, sorry, Flo. If you can appoint someone who speaks on behalf of your group when you come back.
Sure, I'll put it as a broadcast message.
Okay, cool. All right.
Otherwise, some of them have gone already. So I'll just say, please appoint someone to report back. Okay, there we go. It takes a few minutes for the system to finish moving people into rooms.
Yeah.
I'm just also checking if anyone is alone in a room so I can move them. I'm going to move Valentina.
Yeah. And Rakesh.
Move Valentina maybe to room 1. Oh, Rakesh. I'll move Rakesh also. Room 2. There's some who are about 2 per room. Mundia, I'll move Mundia to room 7. Yeah, the other rooms have 2 or 3 people each.
Yeah. Oh, I did get some water, Flo.
Well done, well done. So we've got quite a few people who were not able to join the room, which is okay.
That's fine. That's fine.
What I'm thinking is, if the guys who haven't been able to join rooms, if you would like to have an open discussion while we're waiting for the guys in the rooms and we put something in the chat, that's also fine. If you have any general questions.
Yeah.
Then the ones who have gone away will join us shortly.
Yeah.
A comment I did want to make about stress on projects is just how differently it can manifest.
Yeah.
And in the virtual environment, the levels have risen simply because people feel compelled to be okay. When they're on a call, they're on a virtual Teams meeting. Everyone says all good, all good. You know, that comment is always interesting because sometimes they're not all good.
That's true. That is very true, yeah.
I wonder how others are dealing with that, but we'll see what comes back from that.
And there's a whole lot of micromanaging as well that is come as a result of virtual meetings. Probably working harder. And we actually don't realize how important that break was driving to work. It kind of, you know, you could zone out, you know, coffee breaks as well. And you don't quite have that, you know.
Yeah, you've lost that transition time.
That's it. That's it. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's why they say everyone is working a lot harder now than they did before because there are no breaks.
That's it. That's it. That's it. That's it.
Very, very true.
Oh.
Oh, Peter's still with us. I thought Peter had to leave. I'm glad he's still around.
No, I'm back.
Are you back? Welcome. I've been enjoying your dialogue, Peter. We're already missing you when you left. See?
Yeah, here we go.
Welcome back. Yeah.
I expected a 1 hour long meeting, but I had only a 15 minutes long one.
Okay, that's not so bad.
I changed my plans and I came back.
We are very happy to hear that. We're going to keep you on the edge of your seat all the way to the very end. See?
Yeah.
So we have, I guess I'm going to just give a 1 minute heads up to the breakout rooms.
Yeah.
Just 1 minute to go. Just to make sure that we have enough time for everything. I wonder what discussions are happening in there. Yeah.
All right.
I see there's a comment from Najud. I think we should let people know that we're all in this change. We should all work together to finalize it. Yes, you know, that message of, I'm going to start closing the rooms now, Marlon. The message of we're in this together is, it should never be assumed. And thanks for that, Najud. It should never be assumed. It should be something that, as part of the change management process, it's consistently communicated. And it is something we emphasize. Whether the message is coming as a sponsor message or the message is coming as an overall description of benefits, of way forward, and the messages need to come consistently. It shouldn't be just at the beginning and then it tapers off.
That's it.
Yeah.
And it's, I know we didn't cover this, but some of the leadership qualities that, you know, we need to have when we deal on such projects is that, you know, and, you know, being able to express that it's affecting all of us, but we're all in it together.
Yes,
you know?
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, awesome. So welcome back, guys. I think you're almost all back now. Yeah, okay, now the rooms are coming in quickly. Okay, so Peter said, I see Peter's question, how can we classify stress? Is there a good productive stress and bad stress? Yeah. So actually, when I reshared the slide, Peter, to answer your question, the good stress is your eustress. So eustress is, it gives you motivation, it gets the teams going. It actually can get you out of difficult situations because your adrenaline is pumping. It's good stress. Then you have your bad stress would be your distress. So when you are distressed, you are highly anxious, you are prone to burnout, you are not able to function fully. You're not able to actually think things through. And when we get into the creativity section, we're going to tell you a little bit more around, you know, your ability to be creative even within a stress environment. How do you do that? So we're going to walk you through that as well, because it's quite a unique aspect of HCMBOK. But so Peter, the slide we just had, and I will, as I reshare the presentation, I'll start with that slide. It was definitely going into the different types of stress. So welcome back, everyone. Do we have anyone that would like to give feedback from one or two groups? You don't all have to go, but do we have any really eager beavers that would like to tell us what you discussed around managing stress in projects? You can either put it in the chat or you can unmute and just tell us what you talked about.
I can go.
Awesome.
You might hear some background noise because I'm walking my dog at the moment.
No problem. That's wonderful.
That's
yeah,
beautiful.
well, I usually do agile projects, and one way of us to release stress and some frustration is basically before our retrospectives, or I reserve some time for them to say, hey, did you have any difficult time? How can I help you out with that? How can the team help you out? Do you need assistance of management, or how can we tackle that, and how can we make sure that doesn't happen anymore? Sometimes it goes well where we can, for example, we have dependencies with other teams, and I sit with the other teams and say, hey, my team member had a difficulty. Can we align or something? Can we help each other over there? And usually goes quite well. So this is a way.
Okay.
And what I also do is, to release stress, or actually to make sure that we don't lose connections, because we are together for quite some time. I keep having these relaxing moments with them. Lunch times, I schedule, now working from home now, it's basically, we have lunch together via conference call, or we have coffee breaks after our stand-ups, or we also have drinks after on Thursdays after work. So we still keep connecting that, making sure that the stress level is low, or at least gone when we are in these moments.
Yes. No, thank you for that feedback. It's great feedback. I do like what you say about continuing the rituals, even within the virtual environment. Very, very important. Because it gives people an opportunity to bring themselves to the party and just let off some steam. Any other groups who would like to contribute? Just maybe one more group? What you guys discussed? Any other takers? Well, we good.
We were talking a little bit about the importance of having some fun activities or spaces to actually leave the stress. So my group was laughing because I was telling that I was on a particular project that the PMO used to organize parties all Fridays, and, and it was really crazy. I mean, it was really funny, but I think that to be able to understand that the people need to leave like the stress out.
Correct.
That's kind of something difficult to handle with the sponsorship also. And sometimes you have to actually like convince them that we need to have that opportunities.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, thank you so much for that, Melissa. The opportunity to have fun is important because we are trying to keep positive stress going and reduce negative stress at the end of the day. So thank you for the contributions, everyone. And the last aspect of managing stress, which we also emphasize with projects, and this is something a lot of projects don't do intentionally. It's done by the way. You know, when people need to take time off or have a holiday. So during long-term projects, it's very important. And I was part of a very, very big global implementation where one of the deliberate things that was done was to put in a holiday schedule, a leave schedule. So you needed to know who's going off when. But what we also had to do was to make sure we looked out for the people that were not intending to take any time off at all. You cannot go on for years and years and not take a break. So we actually made sure that we were looking after all of the teams and people took the time off. In some cases, they were quite unwilling to take the time off because they were having fun. But the detaching from work and coming back fresh is also a very important aspect. So holidays and having fun both feature, I think, very, very prominently in the space of managing stress. So thank you everyone for your contributions. So we're going to go, sorry, Marlon?
There was a comment from Natalie,
right.
I think just to, before you leave the slide, just around that. She mentioned that, she uses quick opinions polls like Mentimeter, to ask questions like, how is it going with the project? How was the training? So the fact that it's also anonymous, I think she's saying that it's quite useful. And you also get things coming in to the that you can address as well and prioritize on. Yeah. Thanks so much for that, Natalie.
Yeah. So I think the principle of continuous feedback when it comes to understanding where the team is at and where stakeholders are at is important. And it also brings us into the next area, which we're going to talk about, which is planning and managing communication. So communication, as you may have seen when we showed you the full structure, it is something that will be done right from initiation and planning all the way through to the end at different times and in different ways. But it's very important that the communication is proactively managed. So identifying types of communication will be important. You do this in the planning and you continue to do this depending on the nature of project you have. So if you have an iterative agile project, you're going to be identifying stakeholder needs right throughout as each release happens, because you've got different stakeholder groups. In a waterfall project, you may have a core group of stakeholders you work with along the way, and then you look out for any new ones. So the communication could be in different channels as well, assessing the need for face-to-face communications. In a pandemic situation, face-to-face is definitely reduced. In some industries, though, you can't really say no face-to-face. So if you take hospital, medical, healthcare industry, the face-to-faces do happen with social distancing and with masking and everything. So we will speak about all the different areas because industries are different. And whether it's individual communication that you are planning or mass communication. So you need to take those into account. You need to define what feedback channels you're going to use. I like that Natalie mentioned Mentimeter, because that's also a great feedback channel. And you want to encourage the different audiences to participate actively. So when communication is one way only, you are just informing, you're not actually communicating. You need feedback, so it has to be two-way. Very, very important. Any comments around that before I go into the next communication piece?
Just a comment to say that two comments, Paula, by making permanent fluent communication to the project of how the project is going on, that that communication in the project team.
Yeah.
Mohammed said that it is said that project managers spend 90% of their time on communication.
So if you think about it, the one analogy I love to give around communication is, if you want to see how well communications can be done, just watch politics. Watch what happens in lobbying. Watch what happens in elections. There is more communication than you've ever seen. And why is that? Because you need to get people on sides. So even in a project, you can't get people on sides by speaking to them once a month. It doesn't work that way. So you need to have cadence, you need to have frequency, you need to have the what's in it for me message. So your plan needs to be comprehensive when it comes to the communications. And another very important aspect we'll simply highlight for the purpose of this session is, it's important to make sure you're working with the communications function. If there is a group communications function in the organization, you need to ensure that you understand the responsibility matrix, and we normally refer to it as the RACI matrix. You want to integrate with the communications department. A lot of the time on projects, and I have been involved in projects where we're guilty of that, where we had a theme and a design and a brand and everybody thought it was amazing, but it was not compliant with the group brand. So you get into trouble with group communications unless you are talking to them proactively. And you also don't know the power of certain channels that may exist in the organization that you are not tapping into. So one of your first ports of call has to be working with group communications or having a communication partner that you work alongside. That helps you a lot, and it also saves you quite a lot of time in creating collateral and in making sure that the message behind your project is in sync with the messaging behind the strategy of the organization. So we spoke earlier about creativity and the importance of creativity within change management. So it's not a subject that's normally associated with change management, but it is very important because this is how you land up with new ideas that you bring into a project scenario. And what is interesting is this chart that we're looking at here by George Land and Beth Jarman. So if we were to ask the question, how creative are you? So from about 5 years of age, 98% of 5-year-olds, you're creative. If you think about it, when kids do play, what are they doing? They're being creative. They're creating dragons and they're going to the moon. And as we get older, our perception of how creative we are reduces. So it's not to say we get less creative, but we become more judgmental. We start to put walls and barriers around our thinking. And this is just a normal, natural process that happens. I would like to play just a little clip for you that just underscores the creativity and innovation point. Ooh, let me go back. Apologies for that. There you go.
Qualtis, deeply different.
Very interesting, huh? You see, grown-ups see a washing machine washing and the child is standing there and they see an ocean and the sea. And so these are some of the things that, remind us that creativity is something that is in us. It's in our inner child, and we all have an inner child in us. Okay, so I'm going to go through some of the concepts. I'll try and move through them quite quickly because I am also watching the time. We need to make sure that we get through everything, especially your quiz questions. So when you look at application of creativity and generating innovation, there are certain fundamentals that are critical in terms of generating their creativity within a project. So allowing for debate and collaboration, having an inspiring environment, that whole lessons learned. Somebody spoke about the retrospectives earlier. The freedom of expression, confidence, openness, playfulness, humor. We spoke about playfulness before, and encouragement from leaders. So all of that is required when you want to build the creativity within a team. And what is creativity? We're saying it's a human competency that with correct encouragement allows for breaking paradigms and generating ideas. And we often would refer to it as entrepreneurism because in an entrepreneur environment, you are constantly coming up with ideas. It's necessary for the survival of the solution that you'll have come up with. And it encourages and gives a breeding ground for innovation. So what is innovation? Applying that creativity to generate competitive edge. And that's essentially what we're trying to do within a project environment as well. We are solutioning. So getting the teams to their right solutions is very important, and you want to tap into their creativity. So we look at different types of thinking that are used in the process of generating creative solutions. So you get divergent thinking and convergent thinking. So if we look at divergent thinking, it's literally no man's land. You sit on a call or you're in a room and you are just brainstorming. There's no logic, limits, rules. Anything goes. So you put any idea down, and then you start to interrogate the ideas after that. And the whole principle around divergent thinking, you want to stimulate collective creativity. The quantity of your ideas will lead to quality. You're not judging, you're not throwing away anything, you are investigating any idea that has come through. A lot of divergent thinking has been practiced within the pandemic to come up with creative solutions. Convergent thinking is then looking at evaluating, judging, and making decisions. So you're wanting to then focus, and you want to ask yourself, well, why shouldn't we do it? But you're now asking questions around the ideas. You want to avoid hasty decisions. So you want to analyze. You want to focus on the original objective. What is it we were trying to do? You want to improve on the ideas, and you want to be brave. Consider novel ideas. The risk obviously is the attachment to the paradigms to limit the choices, and you might land up taking away from the ingenuity of divergent thinking. So divergent thinking is no rules. Convergent thinking, you are applying some principles to the way in which you are unpacking a problem or solutioning. So if we look at some of the techniques for generating creative solutions, you want to define the problem, and then you want to then generate the ideas. So it's important to understand the root cause by assessing as much data, get the information, then start to generate ideas to resolve the problem. So there are a couple of ways in which you can do it. Brainstorming is just throwing ideas out, and people generally are talking in brainstorming, and they are calling out ideas, or they are having a meeting around it. Brainwriting is more when you are writing the ideas down. So the person doesn't just say them out, they write them on a sticky note and they put them up somewhere. Brainwriting works really well, especially in pandemic situations where you have social distancing in rooms. Using sticky notes helps a lot, and Scamper. So I'm going to unpack Scamper shortly, and all of these stimulate divergent thinking. To stimulate convergent thinking, you want to start grouping, using selection and enhancing of the ideas that have been put down. And you'll end up with a list of reviewed and prioritized solutions. If we look at Scamper, which is the last, one of the last ones I spoke about in divergent thinking. So Scamper is an interrogation process where you are using questions to try and unpack alternatives. So it can be applied together with convergent thinking and together with divergent thinking. So it can be applied with brainstorming, with brainwriting, but essentially it stands for, the S would be for substitute. Is there a way we could substitute this part of the idea with something else? What can we combine? What can we adapt? What can we modify? What can we put to another use? What can we eliminate completely? And what can we reorganize? And if you think about the way we've been solutioning generally as organizations to try and cope with COVID, there's been a lot of Scamper going on, substituting and combining and adapting and modifying. And I think the latest example is what I heard yesterday that India has done in terms of bringing in oxygen through using jet fighter planes. And I mean, that's really creative and innovative. It obviously meets a desperate need, but they have done one of these. They have looked and said, how can we put these jet fighters to another use? There's oxygen, let's use it. So I think it's a great example of where you can use the process of Scamper. What I also would like to take you through, which I promised, was the 4 steps of Bertrand Russell. So what these are is essentially, how do you stimulate creativity in a practical way within a project? So you've got your preparation where you're going to understand the problem. You'll study, you'll read, you discuss, you collect information, you cultivate the imagination. So it's like an open thinking kind of process and approach. Then the next step is incubation. So in any problem solving, it's important to have the rest and disconnecting from the problem. So the unconscious, unencumbered by the intellect. So you're not thinking of it, you're just going to disconnect and go and have a rest. Walk away, go and do something else. It begins to elaborate on what unexpected connections may actually come in that help you to solve a particular problem. illumination. So this is where you wake up and you have an aha moment. So the idea or the solution comes up. It just comes from nowhere. And it is time for what Archimedes, the classic eureka moment, right? So also known as insight, it usually occurs when the brain is free, perhaps carrying out mechanical activities, bathing, shaving, driving. You wake up in the morning, you suddenly have the solution. So this requires you to step away and then come back to a problem. And then the last step for Bertrand Russell model is verification. So this is the return to consciousness, rationality. You start to actually unpack the idea and the solution you've come up with. The intellect begins to finish the work that imagination started. So this is the time to test the idea, put it forward to the project for criticisms or for judgments. But this 4-stage process really helps teams to come up with those really creative ideas, which otherwise, under high stress conditions, may not have been possible to get to. Are there any questions around the model or the creativity section per se? Otherwise, I'm going to move on to the last bit that we were going to go through. It's very interesting, and I encourage you to just take more time to understand it, because when you use it in a project context, it's very powerful.
That's it. So just a comment, Flo. I think Peter just observed that, incubation, during incubation, this is the reason why many people keep a notebook next to themselves during sleep.
Yes, yes.
So that they don't forget, something hits you. And at times when you think about it, it's like you're inspired. It's not there anymore.
Yes.
So yeah.
No, absolutely. Right. The notebook makes a big difference. I personally, I find when I wake up, I have a sticky notes app on my phone, and my ideas go into my sticky notes. I have a million sticky notes with all these ideas. So I've decided to go the slightly more technological route and have an electronic notebook. So that also works.
And you can't write in the dark.
No, yeah, exactly. I can write in the dark with my electronic notebook. So there we go. But at the end of the day, we've taken you guys through quite a bit around the essence of managing change. And the essence is managing change is to humanize it. It is about thinking of the project from the viewpoint of the people involved in it. And you want to reduce natural resistance and promote engagement. So at the end of the day, everything we're doing from a change management perspective is to reduce resistance and is to improve engagement in order to get to that end state, which is the successful implementation of whatever change that we are putting forward. So I think it's a very profound kind of statement to sum up the sort of technical pieces that we've taken you through. What I would like to do before I hand over to Marlon, to our quiz master. We have a quiz master for the quiz, so we're getting to the quiz in literally two slides. Hello, Marlon. Sorry.
If you can do the next two slides, and then you get the Q&A, and then I'll take over the quiz.
Yeah. We're on the same page. Got you. So the next couple of slides I'll take you guys through is really just a education around what's happening next from in the world of HCMBOK. So we will be running our next training session from 17th to the 21st of May. And it's normally, we do about 4 hours a day. And this particular one, we go through the whole training and certification. We've just highlighted the fact that leading successful change requires effective sponsorship and alignment. So this you will also find on LinkedIn, and also on our social media channels in general. The HCMBOK knowledge base is something that has really made a huge difference in the lives of people that are trying to implement change effectively. And we have the HCMBOK body of the 3rd edition, which is the one that is on the far left. And we've got in English and in Spanish and in Portuguese. And then we also have the change management for agile project. So we will be shortly in the Africa, US, UK space. We'll be training within in HCMBOK to agile very soon. So you must just keep an eye out for that. But if you wish to download the first chapters of our books, you're welcome to visit HUCMI.com, and you will be able to access everything from there. So I'm going to just check if we have any basic questions, anything that anybody would like to ask about. You can either ask in the chat, or you're welcome to unmute and comment as well. This is just before I hand you over to the quiz master so we can run the quiz. We've also put a link on the chat. Thank you, Vicente. Are there any questions, any comments before we get to the quiz? I think everybody just wants to get to the quiz, really.
Yes, it's Varsha speaking. I just wanted to say thank you so much to yourself and Marlon for an incredibly insightful masterclass. I just wanted to share with you that the principles that you shared earlier, it sounded to me like it was an integration around design thinking principles with with what you've shared on your change management approach. And I think that where you've ended it off with that quotation around rehumanizing or humanizing that experience is really to start creating that enabling environment for psychological safety, so that the defenses come down. And I just love the whole idea of creativity, because you're absolutely right. We are very, as children, we are uninhibited. And, as we grow older, we get all these judgments and, what society thinks about us. And I think I've experienced taking engineers through art therapy, or even using sort of masks, to understand the whole change curve in a very playful manner. And I found that, personifying it actually makes it so much more easier to digest in terms of the change.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for that. And you're quite right. Design thinking principles are very much around the human interaction. It's the human face to design. So thank you for your inputs, Marsha.
Cool. Great. Any comments, suggestions? And thank you so much for the chat comments as well.
Yeah, I'm seeing lots of comments coming through. Yeah, absolutely. Right. So without further ado, Marlon, may I introduce the quiz master? And yeah. Marlon, you're welcome to take over from here.
First, if you can just go through the first question, Flores. So we're giving away 3 prizes. The first one is, it's a fully paid up training course for either the next one in May or June. All right, fully paid up. We train you in both modules for free, and you also take up exams. You have 2 exams that we normally do for the first module, second module. And with our exams, you can take up 3 times as well. So if we feel that at times failing is part of a learning process. So, but quite, I think you guys are a clever bunch. I think you go through first time round for both of them. Okay, so for the first quiz, I just want you to name 3 of the 6 recurring macro activities in the HCMBOK structure. So those are those activities that carry on. Remember, I mentioned 6 of them that carry on right from the beginning right up to the end. If you can name any 6 of them, and you can use
3.
Whoever comes out with 3, the first in the chat, would be great. Okay.
I think we have an answer in the chat, Marlon.
HCMBOK, you put in what happens at specific phases, project phases. Okay, those are project phases. So if I had a buzz, HCMBOK, I'll go.
So it's the recurring macro activities. It's the ones that happen from the beginning all the way to the end, and at every phase of the project, you do all of those things.
That's it, yeah. Okay, so we need all 3. So if you're gonna type, put all 3.
Okay. The wall has come back, kicking and screaming there. We have
I don't know. There's Jermaine, is it?
Jermaine.
Yeah, Jermaine.
Yep.
Might have actually gotten it.
Yes.
Hi. Yeah. Wow.
Hello.
Hello.
Well done.
I think she might have. We do have a winner. Yes, she was the. Goodness,
I'm
you
glad I
typed real
managed
quick.
to enter it a bit quicker. I could not mute myself.
And I'm glad. I'm so sorry if you're walking your dog at this stage because I know you can't do that. So Jamea takes the first prize. She was first one. All right, she got all three. Team Spirit, managing stakeholders. I know you put it in SH stakeholders. Okay, and communication. So you got the first prize. Okay.
Well done.
So we got off. Yeah, here we go. You're so happy with yourself. Oh my goodness.
Well
this
done.
Is beautiful. Look at that.
I am
a picture of the winner, eh?
Thank you so much.
So unfortunately, first prize is gone. We now need to move on to the second question for the second prize. All right. For the second question, Flo, if you can.
I think we're there. I put it up. Do you see it?
Ah, gosh. Okay, Tebogo. She just hit it right there. She takes it.
Oh, the second question.
Yeah. Okay. So Tebogo, okay. Geez, after you went, oh man, Tebogo was first there, eh? All right. So Tebogo, after getting the first one wrong, your persistence really paid off. I think you must be good at resistance management when you do change. When you do
really,
change.
yeah, Tebogo really wants the prize. Well done.
Yes, Tebogo, well done. You do win a prize. Can you show us your face with the same spirit and celebration that Jermaine did as well? All right, are you there, Tebogo? You know the
I'm here. I don't know if my video.
Oh, there we are.
We see you. I'm going
Very well
to.
done. Okay.
Marlon, I'm going to stop sharing so I can also see everyone because I see no one. I feel very lonely behind the screen here. There we go.
I also feel left out when I was presenting and coughing.
Thank
I thought I was coughing by myself.
Okay. And
Great
then
stuff.
the last question. You've got it, right, Marlon?
No, we're going to put this to
the
a vote.
Voting.
Yeah, so this one we're going to give to the most interactive person. So I want you guys to think, I've got a few names here that are coming through. Who do you think was the most interactive person throughout? Whether via chat or you know, the unmute. Okay, so just quick votes. All
Any
right?
name that comes to mind.
Name is the one that we will take. All right. So you can all use the chat. The most interactive, yeah. Okay, we got a few names coming through right here. Melissa says me. That is so funny, Melissa.
Yeah, there are no rules that say you can't vote for yourself.
Oh man, I'm not taking you to a quiz show, Melissa. That's not how it works. Okay, so we're getting Paula, Melissa. Okay. All right, Paula, Melissa coming up. Peter also coming up. Melissa, okay, Paula. We've got a close tie between Melissa, Paula. Okay, carry on. We just wait for a few more seconds. Wow. After you said me, hey, this is the power of positive reinforcement, hey, Melissa. Hey, oh man, okay, let's just do. Oh, indeed, there we go. Okay, Natalie, I don't know who indeed is.
She's agreeing with you.
Right. Okay, I think we do have a winner. Okay, Florence, Melissa, power of positive reinforcement. Here we go.
My word. Well done, Melissa.
All right.
You have to sell it. You have to sell you.
You have to sell yourself, eh? Do not run for elections, Melissa. Okay.
I think Melissa should run for elections, actually.
Guys, thank you so much. It's been great.
Oh, so Peter said he lost because he went off and came back. Oh, Peter.
Oh man,
Peter, I think we should talk to you offline.
Yeah, it's a pity. I was gonna say it's a Peter we couldn't vote. It's a pity we couldn't vote, Peter. Yeah. So thank you so much, guys. Just one last slide for me. Sorry, just hang on. Here we go. Yeah, so rest of our details you can get on, sorry, just give me a second. Goodness, it goes
to the
back.
end. There we go.
There we go. Okay. Yeah, so that's our QR code if you want to get to our website, agile.hucmi.com. I don't know if there are any last questions before we part and wave goodbye. It's actually, I enjoyed the session. I was so anxious because I knew I had a cough earlier on, but you guys made it easy for me. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Yeah, we're just slightly 2 minutes off the targeted time, but thank you so much, I think, on behalf of Florence, Vicente, and myself. We're looking forward to engaging with you, and we'll be keeping in touch through LinkedIn as well. Vicente, you wanted to say something?
Marlon, there's a question about
Sure.
whether they'll be getting the slides and the recording. So maybe just address
Yes, certainly. Certainly, yeah. So we'll give you a link for the slides as well as the recordings as well. And we'll get that from our marketing guys to send to you. All right.
Just remembering, Marlon, that we just have the emails for those that were enrolled in Eventbrite. So if you were not, please send us an email. You can send it direct to me. My email put here in chat is vicente@hucmi.com. It's pretty simple. Just send me an email if you were not enrolled through Eventbrite.
That's it. Great stuff.
Awesome.
Okay, guys. You take care. Stay safe and stay blessed. Okay. Cheers.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.